Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Jeff Yanc. I'm the program director at the Loft Cinema here in Tucson, Arizona, where we're very excited to be one of the satellite venues for the 2021 Sundance Film Festival. We've been showing all of our films outdoors in our open air cinema, which is kind of like a drive-in without cars. So it's like a sit-in. And one of the great advantages of being a Sundance satellite venue is getting the opportunity to show incredible films. And one of those incredible films that we're showing is Jockey. And I'm very excited that we have with us a lot of the creative team and the lead actor in the film. So I'd like to introduce everyone. There's Clint Bentley, who is the director and the co-writer of the film. We have Greg Kwedar, who is the producer and the co-writer of the film. We have Nancy Schafer, the producer of the film. And the lead actor, of course, Clifton Collins Jr., Jackson, the jockey. So welcome, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff. We're super excited to be here.
I'd like to just start off with like how cool it is that this film got into Sundance. I just think it's such a great film. And I'm wondering how you all feel as filmmakers getting to be part of that club of Sundance filmmakers. There's so many iconic films and directors that have come out of that, you know, Blood Simple and Reservoir Dogs, on and on, and the Clerks. What does that mean to filmmakers to be a Sundance filmmaker?
We're still figuring that out. That's a great question. But it is very surreal and it feels amazing. And I think we asked the same question a lot before this movie got into Sundance of like, how do you break into that club? And the really encouraging news and the really wonderful thing that we learned through this process is we went out and made this movie with just a small group of really dedicated people who had a lot of passion, and we didn't know what would happen with it. And we just made something that we believed in, and then just sent it over the internet to Sundance. We didn't have any inroads or anything like that, and then got the call that it got in. And so I think that's a real testament to Sundance as well, that they you know, you can just go make something and their judging works on the work itself.
I'm really grateful they opened it up to musicals. That was like clutch for us getting in.
Thank you. Tap dancing jockeys.
Yeah. The other thing
they saw the
I'd
musical
say,
cut, right? Sorry, I digress.
The other thing I'd say is just like, I mean, when we got the call, I mean, it's certainly just like you know, there's a shock, there's emotional tears. I mean, you think about 10 years of filmmaking and you know, so many times you throw that Hail Mary up to Sundance and knowing it's sort of impossible, and you know the odds, and yet at the same time it's just another reminder that you just do the work. You tell the stories that you play to the audience of one first. You don't think about where it's going to land and, you know, who you're trying to please. You got to please this little family of artists, and also, you know, once we got the news, we had to finish the movie, and so then there's this like crushing pressure of of timelines and finishing a film and COVID and you know, all of the logistics that go into pulling it off.
Yeah, this is probably a harder year than most years for Sundance filmmakers, I would think, just because of COVID and deadlines and virtual screenings and yeah. But it's historic too. Like, you're the first group who have gone through this.
For sure, right?
That's a dubious honor. Sorry.
Also, I think it's really the true spirit of indie filmmaking. You know, you enter with virtually very little money, and all you have is your creativity and the passion you bring to the table. So you're entering for all the right reasons. You don't see a payday coming out of this. And I speaking to the actual process, and I was telling Clint and Greg this, there was like, you know, the first few days of shooting, which I believe was predominantly me, the first 4 days, just kind of like side stuff and just character stuff by myself. every day there was something truly, the cinema magic that they talk about. There are these things that you just couldn't explain happening. And I just remember on day 4 and even leading up to day 5, it's like you start wondering when that magic's gonna run out. And by Friday, I was like, that's 5 days of magic. I'm gonna roll the dice and say that we're gonna have magic all the way through Moises and Molly. And every day there was just something like, how did that happen? That it was on the shot list and it was on the call sheet, and we didn't have the crew, we didn't have the big enough, we didn't have horse wranglers, we didn't have all kinds of things, and it still all happened.
So you all knew each other, right? Because you all worked on Transpecos together. So this was sort of like a family unit in a way, going into Jockey, yes?
Yeah,
100.
Greg and I had met Nancy early on when we were developing Transpecos, and she really helped us kind of get that script right over probably 2 years of working with us after we had already been working on the script for 2 years. Really helped us get that script dialed into a place where we could make it. And then we brought Clifton on to play Hobbs in that movie, which was we just had 1 week of shooting with Cliff. He, don't tell his representatives, but he came out early on the sly to do prep. But we just saw an immense, everybody knows that Clifton's talented, but we saw through the work that he did on the movie, and then also from becoming his friend afterwards, we saw just such a deeper well there than it felt like we were seeing in the movies that he was in. And we just felt like there was so much beauty to tap into, and so much duality that he could portray in just a moment of like really hardness, but also an intense vulnerability and a beautiful vulnerability. So we wrote this role for him and built this movie around Clifton and around that performance. And that was really something that every time I would get nervous about us not having, the infrastructure or something like that to try and pull off a horse racing movie, Greg would always bring us back to and remind me that all we need is Clifton and this racetrack, and we can just always focus on his face and we'll be okay. And it was true.
So how does that work if you write a part or write a movie for a specific actor? I mean, not that Clifton, you wouldn't have liked the script, at all, but there's a certain expectation that you're going to do the film. Yes.
Well, yeah. There's the specific aspect of it is like we knew we wanted to do something around horse racing and particularly through the lens of Jockeys because of Clint's background and his family story. When we first, kind of came to Clifton about this, that it was for this role of Jackson, but it was it was a different story. I mean, one thing we talk about is we build stories from the dirt up. I mean, we're really sort of so focused on the world and the people within it, and the story kind of is constantly evolving as we learn more about it, learn more about the character, and so with Cliff. We spent, almost the better part of a year kind of once Jackson emerged and he put it on, we had conversation after conversation, just delving into our own personal lives and Cliff's family story. And then the movie then emerged to be totally through his eyes. And we just, the more we had conversations together, it was just like, no, Jackson actually needs to be in every scene of this movie. It's your movie now.
So Clint, you were born on a cattle ranch, right? Or raised on a ranch?
I was raised, I was born in a Greyhound bus, but raised on no, I was just kidding. I was born in a hospital, but I was raised on the cattle ranch, but my dad was a jockey. And so I grew up in the world of horse racing and grew up behind the barns. And it always, once I grew up and like went to school and all that, went to college and then looked back, I realized what a strange and fascinating world the world of horse racing is behind the barns. And every movie about it, other than a couple, one from the 70s with Walter Matthau in particular, most of them always focus from the side of the stands, looking at the race, you know, and it's all about the lead up to the race, and then is the horse going to win or not, and it's all about this amazing horse, which is a big part of it. But the life that everybody leads on the backside, the trainers and the jockeys and the grooms and everybody, is so fascinating. But the jockey's life in particular is something that really felt right for a movie, because it's so romantic and it's so fascinating, where they're kind of moving from track to track, and they have this almost kind of esoteric. A good jockey has an esoteric kind of like deep relationship with a horse, where they can understand a horse on a level that we can't. But then also it's super brutal. Like, jockeys are killed and jockeys are injured at a rate higher than any other professional athlete. And just that duality alone felt like something to explore in a movie.
Were you referring to the movie Casey's Shadow?
Yeah, that's exactly
Love
right.
that movie. Yes. Yeah, great film. Anything with Walter Matthau and horses.
Exactly.
I think.
Wow.
So there is what kind of on that tip. This movie seemed really unique to me, that it focused on like the nuts and bolts of becoming a jockey and how much training is involved. It doesn't involve a horse. There's all the scenes of picking cards up out of the dirt. You're playing 52 card pickup, and the jumping in the rope and all of that. Were there real jockeys involved? There's a great scene. I kind of thought of it as like the Jockeys Anonymous scene, where everyone's sitting around in a circle, kind of sharing war stories about how hard it is on their bodies and the training and the damage it does to you. Were those real jockeys? Is that how you got those real stories?
Greg, do you want to?
You're exactly right, Jeff. We filmed this movie on a live working racetrack at Turf Paradise in your home state of Arizona, in North Phoenix. And our vision from the get-go was to bring a couple actors and a small crew and weave into a live working track, and to have this low footprint and to have this verisimilitude of the real place. And a big part of that was these one-of-a-kind people, the jockeys and trainers that breathe life into this environment. I mean, it's that backside that Clint refers to is a vibrant community with people from all over and from all walks of life that we were fascinated by, and that we wanted to tell the story hand in hand with. And so they influenced both the writing and we relied on a couple great jockeys and trainers as tech advisors to help our cast and to help us as writers and filmmakers. But then we cast many of them in the movie itself. And the jockey AA scene wasn't in the script originally, but as we got embedded within the track and had this extraordinary access on the backside, there was this double wide trailer that we asked, what's that building? It looked a little different than the rest. And they're like, oh, that's the Jockey Church. And I'm like, really? Can we go inside? And then, saw the room. It was sort of set up in the way that we filmed it. There were kind of chairs in a semicircle, and we were like, well, let's just get these jockeys together and bring Clifton in and set up this forum, and let them tell their stories. And it was so much that you just could never write, so specific in terms of the trials that they've been through. And Adolfo, our cinematographer, and Clint just kind of danced in that room. And it really became, from a story standpoint, and Cliff could speak a little bit more about this, but someone who's grappling with shedding these sort of layers and becoming more open and vulnerable, to kind of hear that transparency around the room as he's up against what he's up against in his own life was really fascinating to us to watch.
So Clifton, how did you integrate with the jockeys? Did you have to do actual physical training with them?
I tried to do everything that they were doing, and at first you enter as an observer, and personally speaking, I like to be of service, be it through any kind of manual labor or ways that I can help, just so I could just start seeing and taking in the world. they welcomed us, and you know, trust was built very quickly and early. So yeah, I love delving into those worlds. I think that's the joys of being a character actor, is being able to jump into cultures and worlds and communities that one would maybe never normally come across or be a part of. So that said, I you know, I cut off my communications to home. I had like maybe, you know, 3 people I spoke to that entire time. And I just stayed. I was very close with Logan, who played Leo. Hung out with him quite a bit, for better or worse. Love the guy. Still talk to him quite a bit. Talk to him at least once a week. And I had a blast with him. So it's a special thing when you get to be taken in to such a private world, you know. And I'm really grateful. I know we all are. And it was hard to leave as well, because you know, you create these bonds that don't have anything to do with the movie. I came home and I was still trying to drop weight, going, what am I doing? I'm done. Am I going to maybe there'll be reshoots in a couple of weeks. No, there's not, Clifton. You don't have the money for reshoots.
I will say also, just to add to that, there's something really special about what Clifton does as an actor in all of his movies, which is what he just talked about, really disappearing into a character and being of service to the movie and the scene. And it just made my job as a director so much easier because outside of our 3 leads, we only worked with actors from the track. And so, like Clifton was just talking about Leo in the movie, that's Logan Cormier, who's a real jockey and had never been in a movie before this, and does an amazing job because he's an amazing character in and of himself, and is so smart and natural, but also because Clifton coached him along and would disappear into these scenes. And it was just such a weight off of my shoulders to know that we're kind of shooting these scenes doc style, and there's a lot of improvisation within the scene and just hitting, like, you know, the beats we need to hit, and then the scene can go kind of wherever. And Clifton would just start picking it up right in the middle of the scene and take it from there and kind of guide that first time actor along. And that was huge.
Remember that one time when I got him and he got all emotional
in the hospital scene?
Yeah.
That's one of the greatest, the best moments of the movie that wasn't scripted at all. There's that kind of monologue moment within it where Jackson's trying to cheer Leo up, who's just been broken. And he's saying, you don't have to be afraid of death. Don't worry about it. Just takes us to whatever's next. And that was at the end. We had shot most of the scene. And then Clifton just started doing that monologue over and over again, and just starting again and starting again. And on about the 4th time, then he just stopped. And Leo, playing Logan, just like was taken aback and then just started talking. And he just started talking about like how I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of not being able to ride, and all the things that were in the script but not said, and that, you know, Greg and I hoped we could get across, but weren't in the script. And it just another one of those beautiful magical moments.
I think there's specifically, for my recollection, and I could be off on this, was I think Leo might have, because once I knew that we had what was on the page in the can, I started to stray a little bit and kind of, I don't want to say manipulate, but just be in the moment and carry that emotion through, that emotional point through even heavier. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was when like, nobody cares about you and da da da, you know, hero to zero, da da da. And I think I said, yeah, well, I care about you. And that fucked him up. Or when he yelled, like, God damn, what, Cliff fucked me up when he said that. Jesus, God, what? God damn it, Cliff. Like, because he's a real smart, super savvy, highly intelligent individual. So to kind of dance around him, I had to I used my 30 years of acting to just kind of rope-a-dope him a little bit. But it was cool to nail to get his heart, to get the real, raw, organic emotion. And that's all very real. That was fun.
There's this real sense of kind of sadness and melancholy about being a jockey in the film, which I found really interesting. And at the end of the film, Clifton, you have this great speech where you talk about how your dad became scared of being a jockey at some point because something happened to him and he had to stop what he loved doing. So that whole kind of existential kind of crisis that jockeys can go through, that they can become scared of what makes them who they are and their identity and stop doing it. That seems kind of terrifying, but it's a kind of a great metaphor for all of us, I think. So how did you sort of infuse that whole idea through the film? Because it feels like it runs through the whole film. Like this could end for you at any moment as the jockey because something bad could happen to you and your life could take another turn. And
Yeah, I think that's more a testament to Clint and Greg, kind of writing the skeleton, and then we slowly began to mine out many different themes, and that's certainly one of them. And one of the things I learned was that the culture of vocabulary is different than how we use words, and specifically speaking to injuries. And I remember I approached Clint early on before we started shooting. I said, when jockeys say they get hurt, it's very different than you and I getting hurt. I mean, I could break a little toe and I'm like, oh my God, I broke my toe. It's more than hurt. I broke my little toe, or I broke this or broke that. Oh God, I got to the hospital. Like that's still not getting hurt. I broke my arm. That's not getting hurt. I broke my leg. That's not getting hurt. Getting hurt is not being able to ride or being paralyzed. That's really the only two definitions of hurt in their dictionary. So there is these cool cultural things that we started to put into it. And, it's the highs and lows happen so quickly in their world because every day, some of these jockeys race every single day. So like when Leo, played by Logan, was saying, hero one day and zero the next. And I remember I put some money, I gambled on one of his horses, and because Leo was starting to set some patterns with me, and I was like, I think Leo might be knowing something about the track. Because I was starting to my spidey senses were starting to tingle. So I was like, So and he thought he was going to come in first. He came in second, and look, to us, second's great. I mean, frack, I'll take second place any day of the week. I think second's amazing. I said, dude, you got second place. And he was so truly down about it. He's like, man, he goes, second place is just first place loser. That's what he told me. So you're the gold, you're the champ today. You're the champion of the heavyweight of the world today. And then tomorrow you're like the biggest zero, literally. And nobody remembers yesterday. It's just gone.
yeah.
So it's a hard life. I mean, you can't place first every single race. You just, I mean, some do it, but that's such the rarity. It's not the norm. So it is a highs and lows, lots of them. And there's a lot of excitement. You got all that adrenaline that am I going to live? I need to live. I need to win, not just live. I need to win.
And somebody points out in the film that the jockeys are almost expendable to the people who own the horses and train the horses. Is that kind of the general vibe you got from the jockeys, that they really feel that way?
Me personally, I don't think that the jockeys in of themselves, but I think their perception sometimes, depending on where they're at, what kind of horses they're racing, what kind of trainers they're geared up with. Some might be more cynical than others, but I think they're aware of their position in it, the same way that me as an actor, if I'm on a giant studio film with big execs, I mean, they can decide my fate in this film at any second, pretty much,
I also just want to ask you about the location shooting is so great at Turf Paradise in Phoenix. So how important was finding that working racetrack for you to making this film? Because that seems like just like it dropped out of heaven.
Beauty of green screens.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all green screen, but thank you
All in
very
LA.
much. It was brought to you by ABC. No, it did feel dropped out of heaven. It's one of those things that it was really difficult to find a track, first of all, that would let us shoot a movie while they were actually racing, because there's so many safety concerns and there's so many liability concerns and all of that the track management has to get past just to make that leap. And then on top of that, to find a track that had the look that really felt important to this movie, which is to look like it's been there 100 years, and to look like its heyday is past and to have character. And Turf Paradise had all these things. And then on top of that, the general manager, Vincent Francia, was just an amazing person and a film lover himself. And so he got the vision and took a big risk to let us be there. But it made all the difference. And it's a character in the movie in and of itself. I know being on a live working racetrack caused some problems for Nancy as a producer, but it shows up.
I was just I had earlier in our conversation, we were talking about how our jockeys were our actors. And it's the first movie I've ever done where you're texting someone to say, can you show up on set? And then you're like, no, I don't need you to be this thing you are. I need you to be the other thing you are. As in, today you're not acting. I need you to ride a horse for us in the background. Or yes, you are. No, come in. I need you in costume because you're going to be on screen. Like, so it was like a family. We were all doing this together and we were all working on it together. And they were so generous with us. And everyone you see in the movie were our friends, but also our colleagues, and they were the people the person Clint just mentioned, Vince Francia, he's in the movie. He's also was the guy who said yes or no to everything we did. So it was a very warm, they really embraced us. And we all wore multiple hats. Everyone was in the movie or doing something behind the scenes or, doing it all every day, which was really nice.
So you're all mostly based in Texas, correct? Or no? But you shot
in LA.
My whole family's from Texas, but I'm from LA. Yeah.
And then Nancy's in New York, and Greg and I are in Texas.
Okay. So how was shooting in Arizona? Like, just as an experience, was it your first time shooting? You had done a short film here, Clint, right? In Arizona?
Well, no, Greg and I did make a short film. I did do my first short film. I thought we did a short film on a racetrack, but it was in Texas as a proof of concept for this. But my first short film ever was a documentary about the border crisis, the U.S.-Mexico border crisis. And yeah, I spent a lot of time shooting in Tucson with the Samaritans out there who I think are still working, and they give water and food, or they leave water and food in the desert for people who are trying to come across, just so that they don't die. As a little plug for them, they do beautiful humanitarian work. But hadn't been back to Arizona in a long time, and then Greg and I found Turf Paradise, and it just felt like the right place, and it was really wonderful to shoot in Arizona because not a lot of productions go through. And so we had, there's a great amount of talent there, especially in the Phoenix area we found, and people who are just hungry to work on a movie. And it was really wonderful.
Plus,
you guys got to hang out a lot more, like have your meetings at restaurants, or although you guys didn't do that a lot. It was the few times is still something, you know what I mean? Because me personally, I felt like I knew if I was going with the jockeys, like when Logan would invite me, come on, let's go eat. I'm like, it's 8 o'clock, dude. It's like, come on, like, let's go. No, I'm not going to be flipping. And I know you probably are, because it's 8 o'clock. When you're not flipping, you're not eating past 2. So I'm not eating past 2. I got like 5 almonds if I get hungry for a reason, because I don't trust myself. I'm not going to a restaurant with you. So the few times I went with Greg and Clint, that was fun, but that was like 2-3 times. So most of my time was spent on the track with the jockeys. I don't know Arizona. I would have liked to.
But we have a real history of Western filmmaking here. We have Old Tucson Studios.
Old Tucson. My grandfather did Westerns there with John Wayne.
Rio Bravo, I think.
Yeah.
Your grandfather was in. Yeah. I've talked to a lot of stunt people who have worked at Old Tucson over the years, and they all talk about how hard it is filming with horses. And I wonder if you had any challenges, because it just seems like there's a lot of specifics involved with trying to film a horse, especially one that's in motion. And if we could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
But there's a difference, don't forget, between thoroughbreds and rodeo horses.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say too.
Go ahead, Nancy.
They're not your normal movie horses. They were real racetrack thoroughbreds.
Yeah, you forget, because we spent 6 weeks there, and you start to get a false sense of security, almost, of just they just feel like normal, like every horse you've ever met in your life after you've been there enough. But you forget, I mean, but they're so magical in terms of just their power and just their prime, this energy force of just like primed, like desire to sprint, you know. And that really came into stark contrast when we brought in a couple Hollywood horses for Jackson and Gabriel to get a couple shots on top. And when they came in, it was just like that against a thoroughbred was so night and day. And I was like, oh, okay, now I know what we've been in contact with for 6 weeks.
It was like we had Lamborghinis all over the set for like 3 weeks, and we were like, oh, these are cars. And then somebody brought in a couple of like I don't know, Volkswagens for us to drive around. We were like, oh, these are different cars. Yeah, but they definitely.
The thoroughbreds are like the dragsters of the horse world, I like to call them. Whereas in your rodeo horses, like what I would write on Westworld, are very well-trained, easily controlled, fun to, you can do all kinds of fun little tricks with them, and on the thoroughbreds, you only hope and pray to just guide them and nudge them. Just kind of a little bit this way, a little bit that way. Whereas in the rodeo, you can go backwards, left, right, scooch, do a 360 this way, 360 that way, barely move at all. It's very night and day.
The only other thing I'd add is just that, for Clifton's like kind of hero race scenes, there's some magic tricks that we pulled that we won't share.
That we will not reveal.
That we will not reveal. But it was really important to us that our movie, again with this small footprint, didn't endanger the horses or jockeys that were part of this track. Like we really cared a lot about being these sort of flies on the walls and to not interfere with their patterns. And so that was really the hard thing, this needle point that we really had to thread.
And it is really hard to shoot with horses, as everybody, as we should have known. And it's something that, like, I always thought about it, of hearing that wisdom of like, it's hard to shoot horses. It's hard to figure out how to frame them, with where to put the camera. But it's just knowing, the big thing is just knowing how to be around them and how to be still and be quiet and act, get everybody to act more like a horse and less like a person. And behave that way, and then you can do a lot around them. And we got very lucky also.
Yeah, you have a beautiful shot of the horses crossing a river while Jackson's watching them in the distance. Yeah, it's great. Just beautiful.
Green screen.
Yeah. So, I just wanted to. You mentioned your grandfather, Pedro Gonzalez. Who I just love. I think he's such an icon of Hollywood, and he made so many great Westerns, and he was a comedian and a musician and a dancer. And could you talk, I feel like he was very groundbreaking in terms of representation for Latino actors in Hollywood. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how the ground he broke sort of helped pave the way for you, because you've had an amazing career in Hollywood. You've made huge studio films, indie films, you've been on television. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the legacy of him and kind of how that's affected you.
It's affected me in a lot of ways. He grew up really poor in like the Mexican vaudeville circuit. Some of the carpas in the Mexican theater side of town in Texas, because there's a white side that you couldn't really perform in because of Jim Crow laws, unless you had like the rich oil man that owned the theaters bringing you in, and then you could do that. So for me, I'm half white, so my nickname's Güero, which means white boy. That was the nickname my grandpa gave me. So it's for me, I simply just wanted to be an actor. So I had different doors to break down, and then also I had to learn about the stigma of being Latino in Hollywood, and what comes with that, and the hurdles you got to hop, and then some of the negative backlash too that my grandfather got as a result of playing the people he grew up with, basically, farmers, cotton pickers, other performers. It was considered like not an Uncle Tom, but something close to the likes, and, I'd get accused of, or certain reporters would be like, your grandfather played up the dumb Mexican role and this and that, and with his fake accent. And I'm like, well, I mean, if we call him now, at the time he was still alive, I'm like, that's how he talks. I'm sorry you have an issue with it. So when I do the accents, I'm very cautious and careful. But he certainly, he inspired me. He was the one person that told me I could do it when my own mother told me I couldn't do it. So he was very much a father figure. He was there for me when my father wasn't. So I struggled a lot when I took on my grandfather's name for 10 years. Because I started out with my birth name. I switched to his name for 10 years. And then I was just being haunted by the loss of my real father. And I was honestly quite tired of having to, submit. I had to submit to the IRS with every residual and tax time, my Social Security, my driver's license, because they're like, who's Clifton Craig Collins Jr.? I'm like, that's me. Who's Clifton Gonzalez? That's me. What is Mexicans got your name? Like, no, that's me too. Like, huh? I'm like, so I still got a stack of papers, right? I probably made like 500 because I'd have to cut them out and put them in and mail each individually. I got tired of it. And you can imagine traveling. I'm like, what's this alias? Oh God, I'm a spy. Okay, I'm a spy from Mexico. So he was very important to me, and I'm writing his life story now as we speak.
Oh, cool. I just wanted to tell you that I have very fond childhood memories of your grandfather because I met him a few times.
Did you?
Wow.
Because I live here in southeastern Arizona. This is where I grew up. So I live next to a small town called Wilcox, which you might be
Wilcox, Rex Allen days.
They have Rex Allen days, which is where Rex Allen was born. And my family would go to this big celebration every year of Rex Allen. And Pedro Gonzalez was there every year. I look forward to it every year because he was so fun. And he did this thing, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he had xylophones in his pants. He would play his pants with mallets. And I was stunned. I was just stunned. And I still remember that so fondly. And he was so nice and so generous. And he was just great. Great.
He any chance to entertain the public or the kids or to do charity events, it didn't matter if he was in a movie. The degree of charities that I've been logging rivals his acting resume. Like any time, money or no money, he wanted to raise money for kids anytime he could help. I'm relearning some of the songs he played on the frying pans that you've probably seen. Beer Bell Polka. I've got the frying pan set up in my other room right now. So to answer your question, though, those pants, which I also have, they don't fit me because I'm bigger than him. So I got to have those hemmed and rebuilt. Those are hubcaps. Again, another stereotype, but it's true. He stole these 36 Ford International hubcaps. So 1936 Ford hubcaps, and he would hammer them out till he got the right sound in them. And he had the pants. They're black pants, guys. So I don't know if you guys, I don't think I shared the story with Clint and Greg. I might have told you about it, Clint, because I was talking about the frying pans, but so he had pockets on his pants, and he would slide these hubcaps, these 36 Ford hubcaps in his pants. And then he had one on his butt because he'd turn around and hit that last note. Yeah. I forgot what song. Well, it wasn't Beer Barrel Polka. It wasn't the Adelita. I've got my grandmother telling me what song it was. I'll write it down so I have it for future reference. But yeah, Wilcox.
Wilcox, yes. And there's a monument to him there.
Wow.
So there's a big fountain. And yeah.
Yeah, the water fountain. Yeah.
Visit Wilcox when you're in town. Yeah.
And Cliff also used his grandfather's gun and holster in Westworld.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was amazing. He was just amazing.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And speaking of amazing actors, so you were lucky to get Molly Parker, whom I always love from Deadwood. I mean, come on. And Moises Arias. They feel like if I didn't recognize them as actors, I would feel like they were people that you found at the racetrack. Can you talk a little bit about how they became involved? Because they're incredible, just incredible.
Yeah, they are amazing, and they, in the same way that Clifton kind of did the work ahead of time and prep to lose himself in the role, Molly and Moises did the exact same thing. Molly she shadowed a trainer that we set her up with out in
Still shadowing her.
She's still in touch with him out in California, and went and bought all of her own wardrobe for her character at Goodwills and Salvation Armies, and got to the point where she could run the barn as well as the trainer who was there running the barn, Stacy Campo. And Moises did the same thing. He had never been on a horse before, other than like once on a tourist horse, I think, but he really put in the work to go out to a horse farm with a jockey and learn the ropes. And he did so well to the point that all the jockeys were telling him before we left that he needed to become a jockey. He needed to just stay there and keep racing. But yeah, they did. We had no prior, we had no prior relationship with them before this movie. We hoped we would get somebody as good as them. And with Moises in particular, we had always envisioned that role for the role of a jockey, like a real jockey to play that role, because it just didn't. I had seen no actor out there who felt like they could disappear into that role in the way that Clifton does as Jackson. And Moises was the only actor we went out to, and just luckily he took a shine to it. And
also don't forget, I played his coach in The Perfect Game. Like when he was 14.
They had worked together, 10 years or 15 years ago.
Yeah, something like that, a long time ago.
So there's that crazy chemistry that you all have. So you knew him going in, but had you met Molly before this?
I did actually. She reminded me, and I'd forgotten. We were both judges at the Independent Spirit Awards. And she reminded me then, and had expressed wanting to work with me. So when this opportunity came up, she jumped at it. Her word specifically was like, "I think I'd like to help this guy," she said. I was like, "Thank you, Molly." And she's magic. I mean, when Clint would call action, you're just like mesmerized. I'm just like, "Stop it, Molly, stop it." It's like just a tractor beam just pulling you in. You're like, "Stop." It's just magic.
And chemistry is what you're looking for between actors as filmmakers. And sometimes you don't luck out, yes, but this was like a really lucky confluence.
The other thing too that you're looking for that you can't predict is this like understanding that every actor has their own process of working, and I think a big part of filmmaking is how to enable their own methods, but then as a cohesive whole, how does everyone play together, and that was one thing that we didn't have to work. Sometimes you have to work really hard at that and do a really delicate dance. But I'd say with these three leads, they really did form such like a beautiful family as part of our broader film family that I think like on camera, like the scene that really exemplifies that is the bonfire scene after Jackson wins on Dido. And it really is this kind of apex moment. It also wasn't in the script before we came to Arizona, but we heard about this rodeo bar where you could pay $40 and ride a bull. And we're like, we gotta write a scene for that. And then we were also just trying to come up with more stuff for Molly because like the energy she brought to everything just elevated the movie. And so her monologue was really something we just translated from her own thoughts about being in in this world and what she was yearning for in her own character development process that we literally just kind of transcribed that then became like this powerhouse moment for her.
Yeah, she's incredible, and she brings a little bit of that kind of meta text from Deadwood.
Movie
from just incredible. We're kind of running short on time now, but I just wanted to kind of wrap up with, I don't want to spoil this for anyone who hasn't seen the film. I think most people watching this will have seen the film, so I don't want to say too much about it. But for me, a lot of movies can live and die by the final shot in a movie. The final shot in Jockey is just exactly what I was hoping it was going to be, but it often isn't. And I'm wondering if you could talk us a little bit about how you came to that moment. It had feelings of like City Lights, the Charlie Chaplin movie to me.
Yep.
And your performance was so great in that moment. Yeah, could you just kind of talk, was that always envisioned as the ending?
Absolutely not. That was something, that's another piece of this beautiful magic, and that we were gifted on this movie. We had a much different ending that we went to within the that we went into production within the script, but I felt, and I think a lot of people did, that it just felt a little off. Like it was good enough, but it was just a little off, and you can't really put your finger on what's wrong with it. And then Adolfo came up with our DP came up with an idea for an ending, and then we put that one in and tried that one in the script, and it just felt a little off. And then I had an idea, and Greg had an idea, and Clifton had an idea, and we were all just kind of trying out these things. Guy, our production designer, had an idea for the ending, and then it became just this very. It landed on this very simple thing that I think was a hybrid of a few different ideas of just watching Jackson walk away and just staying on him. And then we just put everything into motion and kind of let it happen. We only had a few takes because, one, we're doing it at magic hour and the sun's just kind of continually going down. Two, you've got, those are real racehorses and real jockeys, and you can only do the thing with the horses so many times, especially really professional horses like that they're there to do a job. And so they start getting keyed up if they're in the spot where they're supposed to race and they're not racing. But Nancy pulled 10 rabbits out of 10 hats to get everything set up to where we could shoot that shot. The sun was perfect. Adolfo was perfect. And then at that point it was just, and Greg was in the background, like managing all these different jockeys to like, go here, go there. And then at that point it's just leave the camera on Clifton's face. And I remember, Cliff, we started talking before the shot of like what to do. And I had this whole spiel that I had come up with to try and tell you. And you're like, I got it. It's good. And so it took no direction to he knew what his character was going through, all the different realms of it. And I think to be able to watch that over the course of, I don't know, 2 minutes or whatever it is, of just watching him walk away, it's really beautiful to see all those different things come over his face. It's really cathartic.
I'll just add one thing, that the song that's playing over that whole scene is a song called Felicity by an artist out of Montreal named Hologram. And Clint had put together a playlist of just music he had been hearing in his head over the 3 years of us developing this project that he shared with the whole cast and crew. And I remember early on, I was like, what is this one? And why have I never heard it before? This piece, Felicity. So much so that I had a group of our crew that I'd take home every night from the track, and our focus puller in first AC was this Argentinian Jonas, and every night after a long day we would get in the car and I'd cue up Felicity, and he would just lean his head back and he'd go, "Yes, Greg," and we would drive home listening to this track. And so as soon as we dropped it in during production after we shot that scene, and just the way that music kind of the melancholy, the nostalgia, the hope, like it kind of it just sort of, and then the march forward to like a new chapter just dovetailed into what Clifton was doing in such an insane way that it's now in the movie itself.
We only did 2 takes of that.
We only had 2 successful ones. Yeah, we tried it. We had 4 runs. Yeah, we ran out of light. And also before the last take, Scott came up, Scott Stevens, who was he's an amazing jockey. He's one of the most successful jockeys in the country. He was our tech advisor. He was racing at the track, and he came up. We were asking for one more take because we really didn't have a good one. And he came up on his horse and was like, "You get one more take, and then we're out of here." And that was the take that made it in.
Scott Stevens should produce movies, I guess.
Cliff, what were you like? What I think it's I think it's such an extraordinarily layered moment. Like what was travel? What were you traveling with through that scene?
Through this, and I remember Clint and I talking about this just before too. It's that moment. It's literally, in hindsight, it's tabled. I think it's really cranked with the jockey AA scene, so to speak, for lack of a better term, because I can't have my moment of, oh, well, when this happened to me, or this happened to me, or everybody else is sharing their trauma, but Jackson's not. And this is the moment where I physically get to reveal, I get to speak physically. I'm like, I'm free. I don't have to hide my injuries anymore. I've got what I perceive to be my bloodline, figuratively speaking, who's going to be making it. And I'm proud and happy for him. And it's acceptance, but there's a range of emotions. There's also the disbelief, but also the hoping that it's true, that the kid did win, and then the relishing in that joyous moment, and just saying, I don't have to do this anymore. I don't have to do this anymore. And that relief. I just remember telling Clint, remember Clint, this convo, where I was like, I think I'm gonna have cathartic tears. I think in the moment when it happens, I'm gonna go to this thing where it's just gonna, finally, I can be me and not live the lie anymore or hide.
Oh, well.
If that's not a place to wrap it up, I don't know what is.
Yeah. It tore my heart out and then threw it onto the floor. And that is how you end a movie. You walk out of it thinking, it feels so great. It feels so cathartic and wonderful. Yeah. Really great to meet all of you. And thank you so much for sharing all of your ideas and thoughts and memories of the movie. And I wish you all the best of luck. Nancy, I just wanted to say thank you for 7 Chinese Brothers. I didn't mention it, but I love that movie.
Your knowledge of film is deep and wide, and we truly appreciate it.
It's amazing, Jeff.
I just want people to watch it. Jason Schwartzman's in it. It's on Amazon. You should watch it.
Thank you.
Nancy produced it. It's great. Well, thank you all. Again, best of luck, and I hope we get a chance to play the movie at the theater when it's released theatrically, whatever that means now. I don't know, but
thank you so much. This was an amazing conversation, and thank you all for watching the movie out there, and we hope to see you in person at some point in the future.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you, Jeff.
See you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care.